I followed my dreams and opened an antique store to have adventures and spend time as a family. Sometimes you have to climb a mountain and open some new doors to find the treasures inside. This is our life, this is our adventure, and this is Curiosity Inc. So I've decided to make a pit stop at the Reynolds Alberta Museum. It is one of Western Canada's and possibly one of Canada's largest automotive and transportation related museums. So let's go for a little tour and see what there is. And when you first walk in, you see this amazingly large steam engine. This is a Leonard & Sons 16 by 36 coreless steam engine. This would have run an entire facility. So it would have been at a plant, either natural gas or something along those lines would have kept the boiler going. But this thing is massive. I would say probably about, that wheel's got to be about, 16 feet roughly. It's absolutely massive. And we have come during a special exhibit dedicated to the Mclaughlin Buick, which of course was a Canadian carriage and coach builder who built amazingly beautiful brass era automobiles with the Buick name. So we're gonna go see if there's any more of these beauties to have a look at. This particular model is a 1908 Mclaughlin Model F. Everywhere you look, there's just something interesting to look at, like this 1905 curved dash Oldsmobile that was purchased by the founder of the museum's father and used as his daily driver in the town of Wetaskiwin. An amazing piece of history that they were able to retain, keep in the family, and now put in the museum. And these guys collected all kinds of neat stuff, and they're very well known in this area. But they brought back all sorts of interesting items from all around the world, including this vintage 1950s Chief Pontiac statue right from Chicago, Illinois. Man, that'd be a great piece to have. Fantastic piece of automobilia. Here's a nice old Model T race car, 1916. The inspiration for me to get mine done. You can see these were really simple. Gas tank just mounted right above the engine. Of course, you have your gas line right above the hot exhaust manifold, so you better hope that you got that shut off. And this is kind of what kicked off the Mclaughlin name. This is a 1900 Mclaughlin Trap. This would have been one of their earlier carriages, and at one time they produced 25,000 carriages a year, making them one of the largest carriage manufacturers in the Commonwealth. And of course, later they would start to make automobiles. This is a chassis for Mclaughlin Model F, so not much to it, really. This is a very simple engine, very simple design, and it's chain drive, which is kind of unique. If you look, it's got a giant chain going around the rear end versus having a drive shaft. It's kind of neat that they left the body off this one so you can see exactly how the mechanics worked on it. And here is a 1910 Mclaughlin Runabout. Brass era. This is just a tiny little car. It's probably about the same size as a Model T, but a little bit heavier duty, a little bit fancier. And this one looks like it's fairly original condition. Nice little 1918 Mclaughlin delivery with canvas sides. It's a very pretty but simple little vehicle. And next to it we've got the Chevy Model 490. And this was made in conjunction with the Mclaughlin Coachworks Company. This one looks like it's very nicely restored and in green and black combination. I always like to bring my kids to this museum. It's a lot of fun and there's lots of cool stuff to look at. The back of the museum has lots of interactive displays, and yeah, they've got a little town set up and movie theaters and all kinds of fun stuff for the kids to do. So I'm gonna walk around and see what there is to see. I own one of those. I have a late 1800s, early 1900s tandem. Mine is a steer from the rear, and it's not nearly as complete as that bike. I should really get on it and get that bike of mine fixed up, because it'd be nice to have a 1800s tandem bike. It'd be pretty neat. One
thing this museum does is a fantastic job of changing out their displays. Every time I come here, there's something new to look at, like this 1901 Locomobile. They've got quite a few early cars on display this time around, and some that are in original, unrestored condition that I have not seen before. In fact, last time I was here, they had more of an ode to the 50s going on and a lot of really cool big fin classics. This time, there's some really interesting early stuff, and I just love it, because you don't get to see them very often at all. Like this 1908 Mitchell. When was the last time you saw one of these? And this is an all-original car. It's fantastic. It's been reported, as it says here, that it's been driven only less than 1,000 miles, and looking at this car, you definitely would believe it. I mean, even the upholstery is original, and that's a very rare find. Well, there's lots more to see, so let's keep flying around to see what we can find. The other great thing is that this museum isn't just focused on automobiles or tractors, there's also motorcycles and airplanes and pretty much anything motorized, really. They've got some amazing stuff, including this early humpback Indian motorcycle, which essentially is a bicycle with a motor on it. A lot of these early motorcycles were just that. They have all kinds of neat and interesting items. For many years, people would take a car and fully restore it, and as much as I appreciate a fully restored car, sometimes I like the looks of one that's fresh out of the barn. There's preservation classes for these cars, and they really look fantastic. They give you a sense of what time and age is done to it, and mechanically they can be brought right back, but they leave the patina. Here's a real knockout, a 1929 Duesenberg Phaeton Royale. This car cost $20,000 in 1929, which would have been a huge amount of cash. But these were not your average car for your average person. You would have had to have been celebrity or doing quite well for yourself to afford one, and in fact, it's pretty much the same today. In fact, these cars were such a status symbol that the phrase, "it's a doozy," would come from the name Duesenberg, meaning a sure sign of quality. This next car is a long wheelbase Mclaughlin Buick, but this one has a special past. It served the Jasper Park Lodge, which was the lap of luxury for those who wanted to rough it in the majestic Rocky Mountains in Jasper, Alberta, where it would have taken you to the hotel and back, and also out sightseeing. But with this large canvas roof, it would not have served much protection against the numerous bears which are in this park, and let me tell you folks, they are not after your picnic baskets.
This is a 1934 Citroen Half-Track. This particular one is the one that was built by Charles Bideau on his expedition from Edmonton up to Alaska. And as you can see, it's been restored and is in working condition. Some people believe that this one was actually built and financed by the Nazis, which they did have ties to at that time. And see this big old Reeves steam engine behind me? Well, that's what my great-grandfather used when he emigrated from North Dakota up to Canada around the 1900s. He used one of these old steam tractors to plow his fields and clear land for the CP rails. And yeah, I think he was still paying that thing off by the time he died. He had a really big loan on it, but kept him busy and kept him working for a lot of years. And if you haven't been next to one of these old Reeves steam engines, they are massive. This is almost a good 2 stories tall. You'd have to really climb way up there. And look at this amazing basket weave pattern they have on the wheels here to sturdy it up. I'm not gonna obviously touch it because we're in a museum, but it's pretty amazing and cool piece of history. And they've also had some farm machinery and farm stuff donated to the museum as well over the years, like this wonderful Case Eagle. Those are very collectible. And if I look up, they've got all the old tractor signs, including the John Deere. That's a porcelain sign. You can tell it's the earlier John Deeres are what they call 3-legged signs, where you can only see 3 legs, and the later ones are 4. So that would be a particularly good sign. I had a chance to buy one this year and I missed my opportunity. And they've built a replica Northstar gas station in here. Of course, Northstar was a Canadian brand, and at my shop right now, I actually have that exact same sign. It's the larger 6-foot porcelain Northstar circle. And yes, I've got one sitting at the store right now. Let's have a look inside the old gas station, see what there's to see. And it looks like they use the inside of the gas station for classroom purposes. There's a school here doing a tour. But if we look up on the walls, there's all sorts of old oil cans. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit and see. You can see the Lion Oil. There's a Narco, Hudson Built Car Sales and Service sign. There's actually some really good stuff. Your average person probably wouldn't know, but some of these old service signs like that Willie's Night, very, very rare, very desirable. There's an Overland one. And if I spy, just a little bit down to the right, there's three. You can barely make them out. I'll try and point. They're right there. Those are three or four Buffalo tins. Those things are probably worth $2,000 to $3,000 each. And here they are just sitting inside a classroom. Hopefully people enjoy them and know what they're looking at. For me, it's a cool thing to see, and to have them sitting out on a shelf like that, really, really neat. And in the 1930s, Art Deco and Streamline was all the rage, and they were using wind tunnels. Aircraft was a big deal, so they're trying to incorporate some of that technology into cars. This is a 1935 Chrysler Airflow. I've always liked the looks of these cars. It kind of looks like a somewhat stretched out Volkswagen Beetle to a degree, but very streamlined, very Art Deco. I've had a chance to buy one of these before. Ideally, I'd find myself a Cord, like a Cord Phaeton. But yeah, fantastic, interesting old car that you really don't see very often. This is a good demonstration of how they would have farmed in the old days. You would take your steam tractor, like this guy here with the belts all hooked up, and you would stretch it all the way down through your field across to the threshing machine, which guys would by hand be shoveling the wheat into, and it would sift and sort it and put it into the trucks. These old boilers, they don't fire often because they are prone to, well, exploding if they're not serviced and maintained properly. So you have to get them certified, and that can be very expensive for most collectors. So a lot of times they just sit static. But I have actually seen these guys up and running, and let me tell you, it's quite a sight to see. It's a nice little 51 Ford Country Squire wagon with the surfboard on the roof. This is right up my alley. If ever there was a car that the Adams family would drive, it would be this. A 1916 McLaughlin Model D4 hearse. In original condition, with original woodwork, this would have been quite a fancy way to get to the funeral, and it's tall enough you could stand up inside. But hopefully nobody rising from the dead out of their casket. But if they did, there's plenty of headroom. And here's a pretty little car. I've always liked these. Mercedes 190 SL. I actually was fortunate enough to find 3 of these in a farm field about 10 years ago, and I bought them all, but they were an amazing find. One had a rust-free body, the other one was rusty but had the drivetrain. Wish I kept those cars, because after I sold them, the price pretty much hextupled on them, so I missed out on a bit of profit, but beautiful, beautiful vehicle. Okay, now this is just exciting. Here I am in a museum. There's the Triumph TRW. That's my old bike. I have ridden this motorcycle. That was mine. And I sold it to the museum here. So what a fantastic piece. And super cool to see that something I used to own is sitting right there behind ropes at a museum. I've had my butt on that seat driving it around the neighborhood. So yeah, it'll probably be in this museum for many years, but at least I can say I had it. And they're even equipped with a full restoration shop. Last time I was here, they were working on some very early steam-powered cars, and I can see they've got what looks like a 58 Buick, and they've got a Chevy Bel Air Nomad, which looks to be about a 55 because it looks like it's got the single headlights on it. But always neat stuff going on in the restoration shop. And of course, you can't have a shop like this without having some really cool advertising. So they've got the old Texaco, BA signs, White Rose, lots of great collectible signs hanging from the ceiling too. But nice to see that they're actually working and actively restoring these bikes and cars. And if you're ever out this way, I recommend walking across the field to their Aviation Museum. There's a whole other museum here to see, and if you just stop at the cars, you miss a good chunk of it. So we're gonna head down a little path here to the Aviation Museum and see what's in store. And here is a real beauty. It's a 1942 Hawker Hurricane used by the Royal Canadian Air Force in the Second World War. Just a stunning aircraft, very reliable, and this one is very nicely restored. I always appreciate the artwork they put on these old planes, whether they're pinup girls or cartoon characters. They always had a flair. And there's a rare little piece. That is the throttle quadrant control from an Avro Arrow. Of course, the Avro Arrow, I had my little police car that I did up in homage to the Avro Arrow. A lot of Canadians, of course, feel it was a travesty that we abandoned that program, but yeah, there's not much left of those planes, so to even see one piece of it is very, very rare. Wichita Wiggler. This is a 1943 Beach, and it's the twin because it's got the two motors on it. This would have been Canadian Air Force, like a military plane. You can see it's got the RCF badging on it. The aluminum fuselage. It's surprising they could fit, you know, even large full-size passenger planes inside what seems like a small hangar, but when you're parking planes underneath the wings of other planes, you can probably fit a bunch of stuff in here. This is a little unmanned aerial vehicle, like a drone. My friend actually has a drone from the 1960s in his garage. I think he just bought it because he thought it was cool. I don't think he's ever planning on flying it. I don't think you could, but it's kind of neat to see. An old CB. Of course, capable of landing either on the water or on land, as it has wheels and it has a fuselage built like a boat. As you can see, the underside here, so you can land and take off on the water. Very neat design. They've got quite a few little airplanes in here, and what's nice is that they've also honored a lot of our local veterans and pilots by putting their medals on display and stories about them. So I mean, how great is that they've, you know, put all this stuff together so you can read about the history of some of these guys that served. And there's quite a few. All the walls are lined with all these stories of the pilots and servicemen who served in the Second and First World War. This is a 1947 gray Gull helicopter, and this is the only one of its kind that was built quite like this, of this model. Apparently they're really easy to navigate. They don't vibrate very much, and really interesting looking design on this. This one has an enclosed cab, as well we're in Canada and you don't want to be up in the sky with Arctic air blowing at you in wintertime, so this one would seal off, but very, very early helicopter. And you guys may or may not recall, but I actually purchased one of these Link trainers from World War II. Mine was about a 1941 model, just like this, and I had it in my store for a while, and as you can see, they're not small. You know, they take up a fair bit of room, but I actually owned one of these things and had it at the store as recently as last year. Well, that concludes our tour of Reynolds Museum. I hope you guys thought it was cool. There's always a lot of neat stuff to see in there, and if you're ever in this neck of the woods in northern Alberta, you got to stop in the town of Wetaskiwin. You got to check it out. They do a great car show called the History Road Car Show once a year, and thousands of cars show up, and they bring some of the ones out of the museum and run them around the track. So lots of great stuff to see. So make sure to stop in the Reynolds Museum, a really neat place. Thanks again for tuning in, guys. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. You can also like us on on YouTube. You can like us on Instagram and Facebook as well. So nice to see you all back again, and hope to see you guys again soon. Bye for now.